Hi guys, I'm here with my YouTube channel, Homeschooling Consultation, where I go over everything homeschooling related. I also go over how to do a portfolio, whether it's digital, paper, different things like that. So today I have with us someone who does Montessori methods. So I'm going to do a series on different types of homeschooling, different methods or philosophies that we can use in our homeschooling. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can get all videos on every type of method. I want to introduce you to Amanda French, who actually does Maria Montessori methods. I think that Maria Montessori was a scientist or a physician. Is that right, Amanda?
She was. She was a doctor of psychology,
Okay.
and she was given the task of working with impoverished children in Italy.
Oh, good. Okay. So, yeah, I did know she was Italian also, but I don't know really a lot about her. But before we get into her, I would like to know more about you. So, tell me,
Okay.
why would I choose to interview you today?
Well, a little bit more about me. Well,
Yeah.
I fell in love with the Montessori approach when I was an elementary education major.
Mhm.
I completed the bulk of that before switching majors, but I changed to English with a literature and creative writing focus.
Okay.
And although I ultimately changed majors, the pedagogical approach really stuck with me. And I knew I would really use it in my preschool um, homeschooling with my children one day.
Mhm.
I didn't realize at the time that Montessori went from birth all the way through high school. And so when I was pregnant with my first, I picked up the Montessori method and really started to take a deep dive into the methodology. And everything kind of solidified with me with that. And so
Mhm.
I really just leaned in, and I've just been on a learning journey ever since.
Mhm. Do you have a degree in English? Did you say literature and
English,
English?
English literature and creative writing. So it's a dual major.
Awesome. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Um, Now let's see. How did you decide on Montessori when you were going through all of the different curriculum types or philosophies of education? What stuck out to you about Montessori?
For us, it was really important, um, especially for preschool and elementary, to have something that was going to be hands-on. It's
Mhm.
going to have a prepared environment that's catered to the child. So it's something that they can do it themselves in, something that can be done on any budget, something that's child-led.
Mhm.
So it starts where they're at and follows their growth path. Something with plenty of outdoor time, unstructured time, and exploration.
Mhm.
And then the last two pieces that were important to us was a lot of cultural exposure. So arts, music, dance, sciences, things like that.
Yeah.
And then freedom of movement.
Oh, good. Yes. So a lot of people do homeschool because they don't want their kids sitting in a chair for 6 or 8 hours all day. Like I couldn't do that. And why would we expect a child, especially boys, to sit still for so long? So that's awesome. Can you explain the history of Montessori and like the method of it?
Well, I will do my best.
Okay, good.
um, the method is really a philosophy, and then there's a scope and sequence for each age that you kind of move through by subject, and then, depending on where the child's at in that. So the Montessori method was developed by Maria Montessori over 100 years ago for impoverished children in Italy. And she observed and listened and refined her method. She started with her group she was working with, and then she expanded to other schools and then eventually other countries. And so she had a great deal of experience and exposure to different ways of learning and different children at different levels. The children that she worked with were actually lower socioeconomic status,
Mhm.
and many of them had learning disabilities. So she had a lot stacked against her when she was given the task of working with them and bringing them they actually didn't expect her to really do anything with them.
Who
So
is, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
you're
like,
fine.
why was she commissioned to do that? Who told her to do this, or why did she
Um,
choose to do this? Do you know?
I think she found it to be a challenge.
Uh-huh.
She just was fresh out of graduate school,
Oh, okay.
essentially.
Mhm.
And, a lot of women were not given very much room in science in any way to work. And so they had this woman, and she was very intelligent and very capable. And so, well, let's stick her with some children. You
Okay,
know what I
I
mean?
see.
So
Very
I
good.
really
Alright.
think at the behind it, that was like kind of, let's see what she can do here and test
Mhm.
her out.
Okay, perfect. So why did you feel like it would be a good fit for your family? Did you always know you were going to homeschool?
I didn't know I would homeschool. I knew I would do like preschool at home.
Okay.
Um, and I honestly could have seen myself before getting pregnant, um, maybe doing a mix of some things at home and choosing a preschool. So until I got pregnant, I really didn't know I was staying home.
Yeah, same, yeah.
um, yeah, I got pregnant, and I really I had a lot of time. I got very sick with my first pregnancy. So I had a lot of time to sit with what I wanted and needed, um, as a mother. And um, so, yeah, it became really solidified for me that that was my calling, and that was what I needed to be doing.
Okay, and how has it evolved into such a good fit for your family?
Well, for our family,
Mhm.
um, we really, again, we were looking for, something really hands-on, something flexible, child-led. Um, I really think, though, as I learned more about it, I really sat down and I wanted to zoom out a little, because I
Okay.
didn't want to just be in love with the method and try to force it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but for our family, we wanted to instill a love of learning, facilitate an environment that supports movement, hands-on exploration, a strong biblical foundation, and
Okay.
allows for an individualized pace. Maria Montessori was actually a Catholic woman.
Mhm.
So some things that a lot of her philosophy is built on, making little disciples and things like that. And so, while I'm not myself Catholic, I don't follow exactly her path there spiritually. I do find that beneficial for how she's put it. And then, of course, at home, we have the flexibility to add any subject we need, and we can
Right.
apply a method to how to present that.
Hmm. That's good. Um, so is it still working now that you've had your second child?
It is. It was messy at
Okay.
first,
Right. Okay.
especially when she got mobile and wanted to dump all the things.
Yeah.
Um, but what we've been doing is, once we've set up our daughter's shelf, is I actually flip it when we're not in work cycle. And she
Okay.
totally has access to things, so outside of work cycle. So if she asks for something, we'll let her get it out. And then she can take it to the table or something where little sis can't get into it, or I'll
Mhm.
put up a gate if we need to hold space there. Um, but yeah, for my preschool age girl, that was my challenge. And we're working on things that are not ours. And my
Okay.
littlest is 18 months. So she's starting taught school stuff
Mhm.
with Montessori. And so that's always fun. So I'm doing trays and things for her as well.
Oh, good. So tell me about the work cycle. What do you mean by work cycle?
So in Montessori, there are 2 work cycles, and it's just basically holding space for a 3-hour block of time. And so under 6, especially at home, just doing it at least once a day.
Mhm.
A lot of it can be outside. And I find that for my daughter, she does best with the outside time, maybe in the afternoon. Some kids do best with it before, but she's so like jazzed up after she's outside that she doesn't
Yeah,
want to do any sitting work or
exactly.
indoor work. I hate to call it sitting work because it's so, unrestricted
Movement.
movement
Yeah,
wise.
it's moving.
But so we start with circle time for ours. And we'll do a couple little songs or poems, rhymes, things like that. If we're doing a new Bible story, we might do it at that time. And then I'll invite her to maybe a new work if I have something new for her. I also might, if she just dives into the work cycle, invite her to the new work in a little while so I don't break concentration. Occasionally she's so excited, she runs in and starts working on something. So we definitely, in Montessori, we work not to break the concentration of the child and give them space. So it's all about holding space for unstructured exploration, coupled with enough guidance. So it's like a balancing act.
Yeah. So you provide, now explain this to me again. I know we've talked about it before, but you provide like a table of opportunity kind of for learning. And then you have
Essentially, yeah.
shelves. Yes. And then you have like
Yeah.
shelves that also, so walk me through a lesson maybe on something you've recently done.
Okay, so for example, right now we're pre-readers, and in Montessori, it's a little different than the traditional approach to reading and writing. And so we start with strengthening the hand for writing, and then we start with sounds for reading first before we do any work with letters. She, of course, is exposed to print through reading and things like that, but we don't draw the correlation with sound to letter yet because you isolate one thing at a time with Montessori. So we're working on the 44 main sounds in English language through what's called sound games, and they're really fun. You can use objects or pictures, and one way to lay them out and to use what's called the 3-part lesson is just to lay out the 3 objects or the 3 pictures, and you name them together. So maybe like turkey, penguin, and ice cream.
Okay.
So just randomness, but and then I would say something like, I am thinking of something that starts with a t, t, t. And then she would say turkey, or, maybe guess and then think, oh no, so we never say no, but we might say, I'm hearing that ice cream starts with an I sound, but I'm thinking of something that starts with a t, t sound. And then so if she had gotten it wrong, she might then say, pause and think turkey. And sometimes she'll say the words again, turkey, penguin, ice cream, and then get it. And we're adding more objects and things now, but that's an example of a phonetic lesson very early on for sounds. And you would just continue to do that 2 or 3 at a time at first. Initially, it's super easy. You just hold the object in your hand. So I'm thinking of something that starts with a t, maybe holding a little turkey or something. So, and you just gradually, each lesson would be something different. And so the way to check, so in a 3-part lesson, you say, this is the thing. And then you say, what is this thing? And then you check without asking. So a way to check without asking in the sound games is to give them a turn. And you can see if they're correlating those sounds with the objects, and they're understanding that, words are made of sounds. So that would be when she gets all the way through that.
Okay. And what grade are you starting this, or when would you start?
Well, so Montessori, while it can start from birth, the 3 to 6 materials typically cover, and 3 to 6 is reference to the age group. Okay. It covers what is typically covered through pre-K to 1st grade in the United States.
Okay. Perfect. And do you work at the child's own pace? So if they were very advanced, say a 3, would you keep going past the 3 to 6 mark, or just reinforce?
Yes, you just keep going through. Most children, some 3-year-olds are readers and things like that, and that's still in the 3 to 6 material. So there's so much in that packed in those 3 years. Some children are super advanced in like the language exploration and maybe not as interested in science. And so at first they're just like zooming through all of the language activities. They're reading, they're, using the movable alphabet to write super early. And then some kids aren't really interested until like 4.5, 5 in that, those activities. And so it just varies by child. Whereas some kids may be like super plugged into math and they're not interested in language. So they're flying through those manipulatives and playing with the way that, because they have more of a mathematical brain. So they're just really engaged there.
Yeah. So are you saying that it takes about 3 hours to do the homeschool part of your day with her?
Well, My part's done really quickly,
Okay.
and then you hold space. And so the prepared environment has works for her to explore. So right now, what we have on our shelves, we have our bug unit still out. We're kind of wrapping up a few things. We have one thing from our butterfly unit that she's interested in. Again, which is the West Virginia butterflies. They're 3-part cards for identifying those. We have some hand strengthening things. So we have our geo board out, and then a pencil sharpening activity that really, makes her work that wrist a little bit. Let's see what else is on our shelves. We've got math is super organic right now. We're really gonna, I think she's ready to start with our first more math manipulative. So we're gonna lean into some sensorial work and just make sure she's got the full expression of each one, because when you're at home, you don't have some of that modeling with older kids. So sometimes they may not reach for something as often or think to use it in a certain way. So we might have to give a little bit more structure by at least showing them once another way to utilize it. So we're going to really play with some red rods and the pink and brown stairs, or the pink tower and the brown stairs a little bit. And then the math rods are the numerical rods. And so it starts really giving a great visual to quantity, and this is 1, this is 2, and it's really fun.
Okay.
So that's the next step.
Okay, perfect. So how will these methods change? Like you're in preschool right now, we would say, how would the methods change as the child gets older? Say I have a middle schooler. Would this be, when I think of Montessori, I just think of little tiny kids doing Montessori, but you say it can go for a longer period of time. So how does that look different?
So the 3 to 6 group is going to have so much sensorial and practical life that they're really gravitating towards. And while, like, for example, the 6 to 9 group is still going to have some of that, some of it's going to fall away entirely, and some of it's going to grow with them. So they're going to get different algebraic concepts, for example, from the decanomial cube. Whereas, they were just laying the foundation for it in our brain, but we don't really put words to it in 3 to 6. So some of that does transfer forwards. And then, 9 to 12, they're asking some really big picture questions and stuff that do start at 6, but they overlap and grow with them. So it's very scaffolded in Montessori. I know I'm still in elementary, and you ask about middle school. Middle schoolers, I just jotted down really quickly, but middle schoolers, let me back up. Elementary shifts to having a work plan. So we're making sure at the elementary level, we're hitting all of those core subjects every day, and it becomes an independent thing. At first, it's very collaborative, and later they're just sitting down with you once a week and they're saying, hey, here's my work plan. And you kind of approve it. You say, yeah, well, that's what we're going to explore. So most children rather quickly take ownership of that. Some need a little bit more support. So you just continue that like little conference each week, and you give responsibility as they take ownership. That continues through middle school. And at middle school level, they're going to really take control of their learning in a different way. They're going to be planning outings and learning experiences. Like, they have to plan all of it. So you don't fix it for them if they've not thought about a good lunch plan, for example, so that they learn, that, oh gosh, I'm starving and I didn't plan anything for this. You know what I mean? So they can learn through a little failure like that. Of course, we know that there's something nearby and we can let them problem solve, but they also are planning their projects in different ways. So they have projects, 3 to 6 at the end, there'll be a more independent project, but 6 to 9, 9 to 12, there's a growing independence there. And in middle school, they're like fully running that. And so it may even be like something where they're contacting the state park to set up a cleanup instead of the mom doing it. And they're contacting their friends to see who wants to volunteer with them. And they're organizing the whole thing. And so they're taking ownership of that. And that grows through high school. And each child, again, is different. So you may say, we need to lean into some gaps here. This is where we're seeing we need to grow on that. And so each subject would have a different application for that. But those are just a few examples.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's actually like really what should happen. Give them more responsibility. Don't just hand them the work, finish this or do this, but they're actually thinking things way ahead instead of you doing all the thinking for them, and they just show up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And the way it's scaffolded allows them to have little jobs all the way along to where
Mhm.
they're growing in that independence.
Did you also tell me that you had aligned your Montessori methods with the standards of West Virginia?
I did. I was
Okay.
curious personally. So I
Yeah.
sat down for 3 to 6 so far.
Okay.
And I looked at, because I knew that this would at least cover her kindergarten. And so in the state of West Virginia at kindergarten, you have to turn in your notice of intent and things like that.
Mhm.
Um, and we may not always be in the state. So if we moved, I wanted to like have a really thorough record of what we've done.
Mhm.
And then you always think like, what if something happens to me and she does have to go to school or things like that. So I'm like a plan B person.
Okay.
So I wanted it to be super easy for like unexpectedness.
Yeah.
So that caused me to dive in and really look. Um, and so I put that in my digital tracking tool,
Mhm.
which I turned in as my portfolio
Mhm.
this year. And just kind of paralleled exactly what we were working on in Montessori and when that's hit. And I was really surprised at how much it is happening in the 3 to 6 classroom. Like I
Yeah.
said, we're getting into some first grade stuff at some places.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Awesome. And actually, it was a really good portfolio. It was digital. It had a spreadsheet with links and everything. So tell me about that spreadsheet that you created for
Sure.
portfolio purposes.
So I wanted to have something that worked as a tool for me,
Hmm.
so that I could take notes, on our rotation or what we're doing, unit or theme or just traditional Montessori. Sometimes we don't really have a unit on the shelf, but I'm a big unit gal, so we
Yeah,
normally have
yeah,
something going.
yeah.
Um, and so that kind of thing, but also have an attendance sheet and then have the core subjects with the scope and sequence for Montessori
Mhm.
together, and then just a little checklist on the side so it's clear, because you can do so much and you could really use one subject and hit all 5 required subjects really easy. We've got a language component, a math component, you've got your social studies and your just everything
Yeah,
falling in
science
there so
and
easily.
yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted that in one place though, because I felt like I was constantly going to my scope and sequence, and then I would be going to here and I'd double check this. And so I wanted it all in one place.
Mhm.
Um, and then kind of I liked the visual of making sure I'm progressing through
Mhm.
enough to complete this in 3 to 6 years, the 3 to 6 year time frame, so
Uh-huh.
that we're making progress. I wanted to really see, our
Right.
you almost feel when it's so child-led, sometimes you wonder like, am I moving through this enough? And that really can show you, I'm checking enough boxes here on initial exposure. It may not be something that they're super interested
Mhm.
dialing into. This, we just completed year 1, and so she just turned 4, so I mean she is still young, and you don't force things at this age or any age really. You do have to have some things done as you get older, but
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, anyways, I
Uh,
don't want to ramble, but that's kind of like a good
oh, yeah.
picture I think of the portfolio and checking tool thing I put together. And at the end I had that we referenced with the state standards and
Mhm.
the parallel there with the Montessori benchmarks.
That's good. Very, very good. Um, do you have anything else you want to share? I thought you mentioned just a minute ago about units. So I know lots of homeschoolers do unit studies. So, for example, like the Olympics are coming up. And so some homeschoolers would buy a unit study on the Olympics and then just work on that for so long. Is that the same thing with Montessori units?
Yeah, it's very
Okay.
similar. We are not real huge on worksheets. If a child was really interested in maybe penmanship work or doing by hand math work or something like that, you definitely supply that. But the initial exposure is very tangible. So it may feel a little different, but well, for example, we did a ballet unit last year,
Oh, okay.
and we had our counting work was with little ballet slippers that we'd planned out, and our language work, we were introducing new names of different ballet poses and just things with, and tap, we included tap a little bit too. The tangible, she wanted to sign up for tap and
Yeah.
ballet, and so she does that, and then she's free to do that at home. And once we've done, circle time, sometimes she does choose to dance for a little while.
Mhm.
um let's see what else, we read a lot together, and um so we would just have different activities and books and things like that,
You go to the
games.
library for those books, or do you buy
I
them?
actually am horrible returning them.
I
So
know,
a
me
lot of them
too.
I purchase,
Yeah.
um, just
Uh,
because I'm never taking it back anyways, and I'm just going to end up paying more to the
yeah,
library.
exactly.
So
Okay.
I'm an Amazon mom, and
Mhm.
most things in my units can be purchased on Amazon.
Okay.
Or if it's a more specific Montessori thing, then I might have to grab it from like maybe Kid Advances, one I use a lot.
Okay.
But they actually sell on Amazon now too. So
Perfect. So if I were going to start Montessori, what resource should I invest in to begin with?
reading for the adult or for the child.
Um, Either one. What do you recommend?
Well, I'm actually working on, I just did a post on my blog on beginning readers
Mhm.
that are really great phonetically. Just ask some other Montessorians and teachers and things like that. And then I've also looked at some different blogs and looked at what's working for people, and then kind of looked at them myself. I just got some in. Absolutely love. So I have some recommendations together for
Okay.
beginning readers.
Okay.
I'm actually prepping for a whole sequence where I think this summer we'll finish up the sound games and start what's called the sandpaper letters.
Mm-hmm.
After the sandpaper letters comes the movable alphabet, which is our first writing activity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it breaks off a little bit, and there's the middle insets, which really help refine movement. And then there's also the reading sequence. So I'm really leaning into that and prepping for that right now.
Okay. And if I, as a mom, were interested more in the theory and the whole, like if I wanted to choose this method, what should I, besides going to your blog, what resource would you recommend?
I definitely recommend reading everything that she writes, definitely.
Okay.
But if you're going to read her writing, they can be a little heavy sometimes, but they're a good read. Um, she's very intelligent, and it
So I
is,
could say I could on Amazon type in Maria Montessori
you
and
want to
her
grab
books.
the Montessori method
Okay.
first and the absorbent mind. I would recommend those two first.
Never mind. Okay.
If you're doing 3 to 6, and if you're saying like, I really haven't, my kid's a little older than that, and I haven't done formal learning with them yet. They're kindergarten, first grade, traditional age. They're like 6, 7, 8. This is still where you would start,
Okay.
because you would be still wanting to start with that good sound phonetic base with the sounds, and then moving towards understanding the letter and sound correlation with the sandpaper letters, which you can make at home.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is stuff that you could make or like download some printables to utilize as. You don't necessarily have to buy the expensive stuff. I definitely don't have anything expensive. Um,
Okay. I
so
like
it's definitely
that.
affordable.
I like it.
And you can make it work. Like there's Mathesori, I think's how they say it, and they have kits together, and they're super affordable. So that's another way you could go for the math manipulatives.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little smaller than the original ones, but I think they can still work. There could be a time where some kids need, you know what I mean, the original, but I think most kids would do
Mm-hmm.
good with that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of ways to do it. But for the parent, I would start with Basic Montessori by David Gutman,
Okay.
Montessori Read in My Right, excuse me, by Lynn Lawrence. And then I recently just grabbed, I think it's pronounced Muriel Dwyer,
Okay.
Dwyer. And she has a pamphlet, and it's like $12 and I'll give you the title. It's longer. It's like a key to exploring reading and writing in the English language.
Mm-hmm.
And it simplifies this so much and
Okay.
really shifted some of the things I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I highly, that one's super simple and short. All 3 of those are very accessible. I recommend them for any child that's second grade or under.
Okay, perfect. And is there anything else? I kind of cut you off there, not about unit studies, but is there anything else you'd like to share about your
Um,
method and all the things that you're doing?
Yeah, well, I do have a blog where I share a little bit about what we're doing. I'm thinking about putting together like a little trial group. If anybody would like to kind of get a deeper peek at it, where I could go live and share a little bit more and answer questions, and see if that's something that's of value to people.
Mhm.
They would get my units and stuff ahead of time for free, and you'd have all the resources, so you don't have to do all the planning. So I love planning, but I know everybody doesn't love planning.
I love planning too. Okay.
Of course, you have my tracking tool. I've shared that. So if you wanted to do the Montessori method and utilize that, you could also make it yours really easy.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm thinking about getting that together for August maybe.
Yeah.
And just putting out a little feeler and seeing if some people maybe want to participate in that. I'm not 100% sure what it looks like other than that yet.
Yeah.
But you would get, so I'm planning 6 months in advance and prepping 6 months in advance now. I'm trying
Oh, good.
constantly like, oh, we're doing this today, or next week.
Uh-huh.
So having it written out and having it 100% ready is where I'm shifting to that last part, because I do a lot of the materials myself. Some of them, I shouldn't say a lot, some of them I do myself, and so
Right.
that can be time consuming. So I'm just learning to make space a little bit ahead of time for myself. But anyway, so I have it further than I used to even, and I plan for the year. So but I have like the details further in advance. So I think if people are interested in that, and you don't have to do Montessori to be utilizing the unit, you can add and take away. Some of the resources I use do have worksheets and things like that you could print out that I haven't, like Green Urban Creative. She a lot of times has some penmanship stuff. She kind of is like Montessori meets Charlotte Mason.
Oh,
So
wow.
she's bringing in a lot of wonderful nature study. Yes, I think Charlotte Mason is so lovely in how she does her nature studies and things. And I think that you can apply the Montessori method to what she's doing, or you can just run with what she's doing.
Yeah. I love it.
So
Yeah. I love that idea. And I do like the Charlotte Mason. But when I talked to you, like I had never talked to anyone that did this Montessori for homeschooling. So that's why I wanted to bring you on here. If people have more questions or they want to contact you or get in touch with you, what do you want them to do?
well, I have a blog. It's called the Essentially Holistic life.com,
Okay.
and so they can message me there, or I'm on Facebook, but my Facebook page isn't super active. I'll do answer on Messenger though, so if they wanted to message on
All
Messenger,
right.
that's an option as well.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you for coming. I learned so much. I learned a lot when we did the portfolio or the trial portfolio that we did. And I learned a lot today. And I really appreciate your insight and your wisdom on this method that I don't think a lot of people realize that you can do homeschooling. When I think of Montessori, I think of those little like kitchen sets, the little playhouse or whatever that they would like play in. That's all I really
Yeah.
knew about it.
And
So
some
thank
people
you
picture
for,
those little classrooms that are picture
yeah,
perfect, and
yeah,
some people have picture perfect homeschool rooms. Ours is not picture perfect all the time, but
yeah, exactly. Mine either. But yeah. All right. Well, I know a lot more about it, and I'm really thankful that you came on and did this. So if anybody has any comments to make or questions to ask, we'll be interacting long after the video goes up. So just type your question and we'll get back to you. All right. I thank you for joining. And I
thank you for
think,
having me.
oh, you're welcome. Yeah, we'll do it again sometime when they're in the
Good.
7 to 9 group. We'll do it again.
Yeah, sounds
Okay.
good to me.
All right. All right. Goodbye.